Hello guys, what's going on? Today I want to talk to you a little bit about this book here, Classical Economics by Murray Rothbard. Is the second book that he wrote regarding the history of the economic thought through the lens of the Austrian School of Economics. I've reviewed already this one here, which is the first book, Economic Thought Before Adam Smith. And now I'm doing this one, and I'm gonna try not to be too much specific as I was with this one, with this review. I want to be more efficient and more concise, but I don't know if I can do that. Anyways, so in this book he talks about classical economics, so it's like from the 1900s all the way to, actually it's pretty much the 1800s, the 1900, I'm sorry, the 19th century or the 1800s was like the most it was the century in which the science of economics saw the biggest amount of discoveries and development of the theory, and a lot of number of economists were born. I'm sorry for I forgot the verb in English for the term. I'm sorry. But anyways, it was a very strong and present and full of minds century for economics, for the science of economics, the 19th century, so the 1800s. And so this book it's basically all about the 1800s, and it's way more dense, I would say, than this one, way more dense, and yeah, he talks about he opens the book talking about Jean-Baptiste Say. Did you guys like my pronunciation? And I even, bought his book because I completely felt in love with Jean-Baptiste Say when I read about him in this book. And Murray Rothbard is also in love with this guy. And I've already, I read almost like half of this book, and it's insanely good, very straight, very direct, very charming. And it looks like you're reading a libertarian from, today. Awesome, so awesome. But anyways, he talks about Jean-Baptiste Say, as I said, from the beginning of the 19th century. And then, let me see, he talks about the utilitarians, so Jeremy Bentham, James and John Stuart Mill. James Mill was the father of John Stuart Mill. And, they had some good points and some other bad points regarding their philosophy. And talks about David Ricardo and about his theory and how influential he was, in terms of, especially in England, and in the first moment in England, and then in the 20th century, in the beginning of the 20th century, the whole world started to think like that. But during the 19th century, the 1800s, like the first half, he had a very huge influence in this approach of the economics, of the economic science, as a more mechanical thing, so his economic theory is very much in that sense, like very strict and mechanical. It doesn't seem real at some sense. But on the other hand, and then it's after he talks about David Ricardo, he talks about the monetary issues. David Ricardo was very important regarding defending a more concrete, a more real theory, monetary theory. During the discussion that England was having after the wars, the Napoleonic Wars, from the end of the 18th century and the beginning of the 19th century. And it's almost 250 pages regarding the monetary issues, especially in England. He talks about France and Sweden too, and a little bit of Germany, but it's especially, basically this, it's like 200 pages talking about England, because of the Bullion Report, and then and then Pius Act, and he talks about that, and he showed how things from there, they had kind of understand the whole thing, but they forgot about the deposits, and there was the problem was with notes, as he says here, with notes, like notes were being overissued regarding to specie, and the I think was, I forgot the name, but they would call the hard money. I forgot the name, I'm sorry, but the people who were in favor of the Bullion Report, who defended the Bullion Report, Lord Peter King, Henry, forgot the name, Carnes, I think it was Henry Carnes. He changed his mind about a topic, and the first guy, which was Walter Boyd, he was the first one, kind of, not much of a mainstream. It's kind of an underground economist, but he wrote a lot of very interesting things, and he talked about this issue. That was the issue of the Pius Act, and the whole question involving the monetary problem in England, which was not treating bank deposits the same way as notes. This guy, Walter Boyd, like, I think he wrote in the end of the 18th century. He talked about that, like deposits and notes, they're pretty much the same. They're virtually the same thing in terms of credit expansion. They're virtually the same thing. He talked about it. But anyways, people, Rothbard said that people didn't want to deal with this problem because it would be so hard to deal with it, so hard in terms of, the technicality of the problem. So they kind of, didn't care about it. And since it was a problem, it revealed as such during the after the measure happened. And nowadays that's pretty much how the financial system operates. Like creating, not over issuing notes, but creating creating deposits. So look how history is, right? Anyways. And he shows the number that, like 20 or 30 years after the Pius Act, the number of deposits like grew insanely in the banks, in the financial system. So anyways, and this was a big problem that Rothbard tells here, and only this guy, Walter Boyd, he was a broke. It was a broke financial man. He had lost it all, and he started to talk some truths. To spit some truths to people. But anyways, so as I said, almost like 250 pages talking about this monetary issue, and then he talks about Marxism. Very interesting. Marxism, and now I'm talking a little bit about a more of a Catholic view. It's an idolatry, It's a sin of idolatry. It's trying to put another thing in the place of God. It's trying to replace God for another thing. And this started with some, religious movements, trying to establish a new order here on earth, and has this kind of messianic end of the days and doomsday thing, or a paradise thing. Marx was in the paradise team. Let's try to make paradise here on earth, which is impossible. But anyways, he has this religious view, religious aspect. It's a religion. At the end of the day, it's a religion. But anyways, and he gives and he talks about how this, and now coming back to Ricardo and Adam Smith, how this a very mechanical view of economics and kind of not able to see uh, uh, um, the mutual gain in between the economical relations that happen, leads to this kind of thought. And that's what Adam Smith and David Ricardo pretty much defended, like this mechanical, static, kind of a violent thought notion of capitalism. And this also influenced Marx and Engels a lot. And regarding the economic aspect of communism, I don't want to sound arrogant, but it's so silly, and Rothbard like easily refuted a lot of his arguments, and that's not even the main. It's a book of economics, but it's the economic part of the communism ideology is not the most interesting thing. But anyways, he talks about it, and yeah, and he related that to how this communist ideology could fit the interest of politicians, so yeah. And another thing that I forgot was a chapter that I liked a lot, when he talked about theory of capital and how it developed, like, because it was two theories, I would say, and the guys who developed, like, which would in the end become the Austrian theory of capital, and and trying to mix is not the word, but to tight to the marginal theory, to the theory of marginal utility, and he shows here a lot of guys who did that. Samuel Bailey from Sheffield, Samuel Longfield in England, he's known as Judge Longfield, he's from Ireland. Samuel Whately, a lot of interesting guys. Nassau Senior, and this one is from England. So yeah, I forgot to talk about this guy. They were very important in terms of the development of the theory of capital, and linking this with the theory of value, and they almost reached the marginal utility theory. Almost. They were almost there. And I don't know now I don't remember now the name of the author, but some authors, I think it was two of them, they kind of wrote, they kind of had this notion described, of the marginal utility, kind of, it wasn't that precise, when you read now, it looks more precise because we already know what it is, so it's easier, of course, to have a bias view, but when you try to read, like, without knowing, I know that's impossible, but it's an exercise. When you read without trying to forget marginal utility, it looks like marginal utility a lot, but it needs a little bit more, it needs to be sharpened, let's say that way. And it's very interesting, this guy. And I forgot in what chapter. Let me see here. For me, this was like the highlight of the book, this part, and the part regarding Marxism. Yeah, I'm not fighting that, I'm sorry, but I wrote a lot about this topic. Is it here? When he talks about the declines of Ricardian system, and that's another thing I forgot to say. He says that the Ricardian notion of economics, it wasn't that famous during his time, let's say it that way. It wasn't that famous. It became almost like it became more famous. We were like revived after that, like during the communist socialist movement time, like at the end of the century, at the end of the 19th century. But anyways, so the guys, John Craig, Samuel Bailey, Samuel Mountfort Longfield, Isaac Butt, William Ellis, These guys, they were from England, but they kind of had this understanding of economics, more of the the Austrian side, the more subjective approach to value, and this more dynamic view of the economy, and and trying to integrate the whole thing, like this more subjective approach regarding the value of the things, and the theory of capital and how it interacts with the value of the things, which is subjective, as I said. So that's very interesting, and he talks about this lots of authors in England, Ireland, and Scotland that treated the topic in that sense, and they are pretty much forgotten, and they're pretty much forgotten. When we think about British economists, we think about David Ricardo, British from the UK, let's say, Adam Smith, David Ricardo, William Jevons, who else? James and John Stuart Mill, Bentham. They were more like they had this more mechanic approach. These guys are the ones that we remember, but there were a lot of more underground economists that were way more aligned with the lines of the economists in French and the Salamanca school. That's awesome. That's insanely, mind-blowing. And these guys are not remembered, unfortunately. But anyways, I think that was it. Almost 17 minutes. Feel free to leave your comment. And yeah, that's it. Bye-bye, guys.